Um, Okay, hello everyone. Tonight we want to do SPM ask for the first agenda is what you do, and then the second one in we want to finish the Word and Excel, and it's done. Okay, maybe Handy, can you share your screen?
It's very good.
Sudah nampak?
Okay, it's already
Oke, sudah di show ya.
yes. So today we want to watch about project risk management briefing video compilation. So it's Dr. G give this link for us to rewatch about the risk management in software project management. Okay.
Risk management is one of the core skill sets within the wider profession of project management. Whether your project is purely predictive or absolutely agile, you will need to manage risk. I've made plenty of specialist videos on this topic, but this one is your basic introduction. First, what are risk and risk management? Risk is defined simply as uncertainty that can affect the outcome. Risk is therefore something that can happen, and the consequences could be either good or bad. Typically, we talk about opportunities for risks which have a positive outcome and threats for risks which have a negative outcome. Risk management is the process of managing that uncertainty and controlling the impacts of the risk on your project. Within risk management, we find three things: a set of tools, processes, and attitudes. The basic risk management process has 4 steps. First, we identify the risk. Then we analyze it. Next, we put together a plan for how we'll manage it. And finally, we take action. And then, having taken action, we analyze to see whether the action we've taken has been sufficient to properly control the risk. If it hasn't, we figure out why not, we put together a new plan, and we take more action. And we continue to cycle around until we consider that any remaining risk is completely acceptable. We identify project risks by trying to figure out everything that could possibly go wrong, because usually we're focused on threats. However, if you want to look at opportunities too, you can also think about everything that is uncertain, which could be beneficial if it happens. There are many different ways to identify risks, and we have a whole video on that. When it comes to analysing risks, we usually focus on 2 things. And these are the 2 things that define a risk. A risk is uncertainty that can affect outcome. So therefore, the first thing we look at when we analyse risk is the level of uncertainty, the likelihood that the risk will happen. This can be anywhere between 0 and 1. Obviously, a 0 likelihood risk can't happen, so it's not a threat or an opportunity. Equally, something with a likelihood of 1 will certainly happen. That's not a risk, it's an issue if it's negative, and it's a benefit if it's positive. Scoring the likelihood of a risk is very difficult, and therefore I always advocate that you keep it simple. Low, medium, and high likelihood is a perfectly good scale for most projects. And even for more sophisticated projects, you'll rarely need anything more than very low, low, medium, high, and very high, because you simply do not have the sophistication in your statistics understanding nor the data to give anything more of a quantitative or precise definition of the likelihood of your risk. And since a risk is uncertainty that can affect the outcome, the other important element of our analysis is what is that effect, and we talk about that as the impact. What can happen and how serious is it? We often score the impact on some sort of a scale, Again, from low to medium to high. And there are lots of ways to do it, but once again, keeping it simple is usually a good start. For those who want to be more sophisticated, the next obvious step in the analysis is to also bring in the idea of proximity, because some risks, if they are going to happen, are going to happen soon. Others, if they're going to happen, it's going to be a long time in the future. Clearly, the risks might be equally likely to happen with equally serious consequences, but we don't need to act in such a hurry with a risk that is going to happen, if it does, a long way in the future. So if we've identified a risk, and let's say for the sake of argument that it's a serious risk with high level of consequences, a high level of likelihood, and a fairly imminent impact if it does happen, what can we do about it? Well, there are 6 core strategies. First, we can try to eliminate the risk entirely, which of course is the gold standard, but equally, it's often very hard to find a single way to fully eliminate the risk without doing the project or a significant part of the project. The next strategy is to reduce the likelihood that it will happen. Do something to make it less probable. Our third strategy, if we can't do those, or if we can and we want to do something else, is to reduce the impact, if it does happen, to make it less serious. The next strategy is to try to transfer some or all of the risk so that the impact affects someone or something else rather than your project. The commonest examples of this are insurance products, which transfer the financial element of a risk, or contracts, where the contractor takes on the risk on your behalf as part of the contractual arrangement. The next strategy is to put in place a contingency plan. This won't make the risk any less likely to happen, and it won't make it any less bad if it does, but now you will have a plan for how to manage it in the moment so that you can reduce the ongoing impact. And the 6th strategy is to accept the risk. If the risk is not very large, if it's not very serious, if it's not very likely, then you may consider that none of the other strategies are cost effective and to accept the risk and deal with it if it occurs. Now, I am aware that PMI introduced a 7th strategy, that of escalating the risk to a higher level of authority, but for me, all that is offering the same 6 strategies to somebody else. It's not a new strategy, it's just an expedient based on the management structures, to my way of thinking. So, what are the key tools and templates that we use in risk management? There are 2 or 3. The first 2, are the risk management plan. And I say that this could be 2 different tools because the term risk management plan is used in 2 different ways. When I learned project management and risk management, I was taught that a risk management plan is the plan you put in place to manage a particular risk. So when you've got a large, substantial risk which can have a big impact, you might put together a whole plan for how to handle it. I have a video on how to create a risk management plan. However, PMI, in its guide to the project management body of knowledge, uses the term risk management plan to represent the plan for how you are going to manage risk on your project. Both uses are equally valid. Both tools or templates are equally important and valuable to your project, if only we had 2 different terms for each of them. The second key tool that we use on risk management is the risk register, and I have a whole video on how to create a risk register. Sometimes called a risk log, a risk register is a tool that serves 2 principal purposes. Firstly, it is a management tool. We record all of our risks and all of the information about them on our risk register so that we can actively manage those risks and track our progress. It's the tool we use to identify which risks we haven't addressed recently, and so we can turn our attention to them and do something about them. It's also the tool that we record the progress on. The second use of a risk register is that it is a document of record. It is where we record diligently all of the risks we've identified and the actions we're taking to make the process transparent. It is part of our due diligence. It is part of the governance of the project. As a result, the risk register is one of the key tools that shows you are acting responsibly as the project manager. If you or your team members identify a risk, you need to put it on the risk register and document your assessment of it and what you expect to do about it. You won't be wrong if you make an informed judgment and it turns out that your informed judgment is incorrect. But you will be wrong if you don't make an informed judgment or you can't demonstrate that you did. So, risk management is a process that every project manager needs to understand, and it's a process that some project managers will choose to go into deeply. If you do want to go into it deeply, then most large project management organizations have specific risk management training and qualifications. The PMI, the APM, and the Axelos organization, which is responsible for Prince2, all have their own methodologies and certificated exams. And if you want more of my thinking on risk management, then I have a book called Risk Happens, which is available in its second edition from Amazon, and I will put a link in the description. Of all the disciplines under the umbrella of project management, risk management is one of the most important. If you've enjoyed this video, I have loads more about the details of risk management, and I will put a playlist in the description. You cannot manage your project risks until you know what it is that you need to manage. So in this video, let's look at the different ways that you can identify the risks in your project. This video is sponsored by Risky Project. Risky Project is a complete suite of project risk analysis and project risk management software. It integrates with all major scheduling and planning tools and covers the complete risk management lifecycle. We often start our risk management process with a risk management kickoff workshop. And when this is facilitated well, it can be both productive and fun. But frankly, too often project managers stick to just one favourite method for identifying risks. And the commonest of those? It's brainstorming. So let's start with brainstorming, but let's learn how to do it right. After that, we'll see why it's not really that great and how to take it up a notch to fix some of the problems. But best of all, I've got 5 other approaches for identifying project risks that are all favourites of mine and all of which I've used in risk identification workshops. Let's start with brainstorming. In brainstorming, we invite the whole team to contribute ideas without limitation, and we get them onto a board. To do this right, we probably need to be very clear about what it is we want, and we also need to be clear that there is initially to be no discussion of the ideas. If someone's had an idea, we record it. And then once we've recorded all the ideas, we can start to sift them, sort them, organise them, and then evaluate them. However, brainstorming is not without its problems, and perhaps for me, the biggest of them is managing a large group. There is so much energy in the room if you do it well that you may not be able to capture all of the ideas. What this then tends to mean is that some louder voices will dominate. They will just capture your attention. But even if it's not a large group, The simple fact is that some individuals are more assertive, more dominant than others, and indeed the group may defer to certain individuals. Therefore, they can introduce a small but important bias. Their ideas frame the risks that other members of the group start to identify. They can funnel the team down a relatively narrow path. So we have these two major problems: the large amount of information that is coming at you and how to manage it, and secondly, the contamination of my ideas by your ideas. Both of these can be overcome by my second technique, brain writing. Brain writing allows much more parallel processing of ideas. Everyone is contributing their ideas simultaneously, which means it is ideal for very large groups as well as small groups. It also overcomes the bias because people are working on their ideas on their own without hearing and therefore being influenced by the ideas of people around them. So, how does it work? Brain writing starts by giving everybody a handful of blank cards. You set up the scenario and then you ask everyone to contribute their ideas by putting one idea on each card and using as many cards as they wish. What I typically have people do is to throw their cards when they've completed them into the center of the table or into a bowl or a bucket of some sort. This way you can get many ideas developed in parallel. The next thing to do is something that is harder to do with brainstorming, which is to develop those ideas. In fact, the first stage of the developing of those ideas is to see if any of those ideas trigger new ideas for new risks. You randomly hand out a number of the cards to each person in the group and ask them in a fixed amount of time to look at the cards and to develop the ideas. If they can think of another risk triggered by that idea, they can write that down on a new card. If they can see a way to manage that risk or want to articulate a development of the idea of what that risk is, to specify it more or to explain it, they can add it to the card. With a number of rounds of this brain writing, you end up with a large number of cards, all with a lot of developed ideas. The only real downside is that in this process, we may well have some overlap of work because people will be working on cards with the same idea. However, there are ways to overcome that, and there are worse problems than having too many ideas and some overlap between them. But beyond brainstorming and brain writing, I have 5 other ideas for how you can identify the risks. And the first is horizon scanning. Horizon scanning is looking out to the horizon of the project and looking for the spectres of risks to come. And I purposely use the word spectres because that provides us with a handy acronym, a mnemonic to help us remember 8 common sources of project risk. So we can look out to the boundaries of our project and ask, what risks are there that arise from social interactions or the interaction between the project and society? Or what sociological risks are there? Next, we can ask what political risks are there and remind the group that we're not just talking about capital P politics, national or regional politics, or even global politics. We're also talking about the small p politics, the fact that when you have 2 people in a room, you have politics. The first E of spectres stands for economics, and once again, we've got capital E economics, the macroeconomics of the region, the country, or the world when the project is in operation. But we've also got the project economics, the financial considerations around the project itself. Related to this is C for commercial risks. And what are the risks in terms of procurement, competition, other aspects of the commercial context within which the project sits? The T stands for technology. What are the technology risks that could impact our project? And then the R stands for regulation. What are the regulatory or legislative risks for your project? What regulation can change? What legislation do you have to comply with that if you don't comply with it, your project could get into trouble? The second E stands for environmental risks. And once again, we've got the macro environment, the global environment, if you like, but we've also got the local environment, the immediate environment of the project. And finally, S stands either for security risks or for safety risks. These are the threats that can harm us directly. You can use the specs as a mnemonic in two fundamental ways. One, you can work through it systematically on your own or with a group of people. Or secondly, as your group of people are working through one of the other approaches to finding risks for your project, you could prompt them with, are we missing any political threat? Are we missing any economic threat? Are we missing any societal threat? Or any regulatory or legislative effects? My next risk identification method is a risk database. As a project manager, you should always be keeping a record of the risks identified and the risks realized on your project, and gradually build up a database of common threats that you encounter. If you've got a standard list of risks, and my project checklists pack has one, I'll put a link in the description. If you have a standard list of project risks, then you can use that as a great starting point for identifying risks that are applicable to your project and contextualizing the wording around them. Next is the idea of a risk breakdown structure. A risk breakdown structure is a hierarchical decomposition of all the things that can go wrong on your project. So the first thing to start with is the top level categorization, and there are a number of ways that people do this. Certainly, you can divide your project up by stages or phases, and you can also divide it up by the chunks of work, but we'll look at that in a moment. Commoner ways are to start with a framework, such as, for example, specters. You could start with 8 major sources of risk and then break each of those down. Another framework that is commonly used is time, cost, quality, and scope. And another one is people, processes, strategy, and technology. Once you have a high-level framework, you can then start to break each one down and ask what are the risks in that particular area of concern. My next approach is one I've already hinted at, which is to start with your work breakdown structure. And this can work equally well whether you use a task-based work breakdown structure or a product-based work breakdown structure. For each element of work or each product, ask yourself what are the risks to completing that work or to delivering that product. If you need help on knowing how to develop a work breakdown structure, then I have a video to help you, which I'll put a link in the description. But critically here, the benefit to this is that you can now link your risk register directly to your work breakdown structure, your work breakdown structure dictionary. Each risk can have a unique reference number which extends your work breakdown structure. My final technique is the pre-mortem, which was developed by Gary Klein and documented in his fantastic book, The Power of Intuition. I'll put a link in the description. We have a full video on the pre-mortem, but in essence, it invites the group not to think about what can go wrong, but to imagine the project has come to its end and it has gone wrong. Everything has gone wrong. It's a complete and utter disaster, a fiasco. And then to ask the people what might have caused that. This looks for substantial risks, not just risks to your plan, but things that can existentially threaten the whole project. And then you invite people to work back through a chain of effects to causes and identify the risks to your project. Once you've identified your risks, the next step is to get them onto your risk register or into your risk database or some other risk management tool. We have a video on risk registers, but of course this is where our sponsor, Risky Project, can come in. So if you need a sophisticated risk management tool, take a look at the link in the description. In this video, I want to answer the question, what is a pre-mortem? And explain how to conduct one. The pre-mortem is a technique devised by Gary Klein in his excellent book, The Power of Intuition, and I'll put a link to it in the description. It's certainly well worth reading. Klein named the pre-mortem as an analogy to the idea of a post-mortem, in which we examine a corpse after death to find out why it died. What, he asks, would happen if we could examine a project before it dies to find out the reason for its potential death? That's the principle of the pre-mortem, foreseeing the failure of a project and identifying the causes before they happen. The pre-mortem is an excellent exercise that you can carry out at any time during the course of your project as part of your risk management process. But of course, the best time to carry it out, and certainly the first time you should carry it out, is right at the start of your project. And it also makes a fantastic exercise to use in a team kickoff meeting. The pre-mortem is a way to find failings in your plan, but too often when we look for risks, we take the plan as our core assumption and look for small things that could go wrong based on the plan. What the pre-mortem does is it sweeps aside your plan and says, what could go wrong, regardless of what the plan is? The problem is that we have an intrinsic bias. Once we've created our plan, it's very hard for us to see anything happening that is not fundamentally based on that plan or a variant on it. The universe, however, has no such bias. So, while we find it hard to escape the tunnel vision that the broad path of our plan lays out for us, there may be some fundamental assumptions embedded in our plan that are simply wrong. The pre-mortem exercise allows us to find these major divergences because it doesn't start from the plan, It starts from the assumed failure of your project. Kicking off the pre-mortem exercise, we start by inviting people to assume that the project completion has been an utter and complete fiasco. So let's look at how to conduct a pre-mortem. And this process can work equally well as a live in-person event with everybody in a room, or as an online facilitated event and with your team scattered all over the world. I'll break it down into 6 steps. Step 1 is preparation. Gather together your group and set up the exercise. Make sure everybody understands the basic nature of the project and that everybody has a pen and paper available to them. Step 2 is to imagine a fiasco. Invite everyone to imagine the end of the project and to imagine that it has gone seriously wrong. Ask them to think about the different ways in which it may have failed and what those outcomes look like. Get them to note down the different types of failure that they've identified. When everyone's documented the failures they've identified, then get the group to share them and put them on a board so that everyone can see the different scenarios that you're looking at. Step 3 is to generate reasons for the different failures. Ask your group to write down everything that they can think of that may have caused or contributed to the failures that they've identified as a group. Step 4, consolidate the lists. Now facilitate a sharing session that compares the failures and the reasons for the failures. Capture these on a board and keep facilitating to add to the list, to organize it and to develop it until you've got everybody's ideas. Step 5, review your risk register and your plan. Take all the work you've done and look for new risks to add to your risk register and elements of your plan that need to be strengthened or completely rewritten. Finally, at step 6, end the session by determining what the next steps are and allocating responsibilities for them. Periodically come back and repeat the exercise to keep your team alert for new reasons for possible failures and therefore to keep your plan as sharp as possible. The risk management process is straightforward. We identify our risks, we understand them, and then we put together a plan before taking action. But how do we put together a risk management plan? The first step in developing a risk management plan is to clarify what the risk is. We need to characterize it, describe it, and evaluate it in terms of its impact, its likelihood, and its proximity. Secondly, if we're going to manage and mitigate the risk, we need to understand the causes of that risk. What are the root causes and the sequence of events which will trigger the risk to materialize? The better we understand the causal sequence that will lead up to the risk happening, the better we can design interventions that will address it as early as possible. Thirdly, if we can, the best thing to do is to split one risk into lots of smaller sub-risks, the components. Particularly if you describe a risk in a loose way, like financial cost overruns. That's actually the sum total of many, many financially related risks. It's hard to manage and mitigate cost overruns, but it's much easier to manage the individual causes. Identify those as individual risks and then move to step 4. For each risk, determine which strategic responses are likely to be most successful. And for big risks, you're going to want to combine 2, 3, or even more strategic approaches in your response to that risk. Of course, those strategic responses are to eliminate the risk, to reduce its likelihood, to reduce its impact, to transfer the risk, to build a contingency plan, or to accept the risk and do nothing. Now, for each of the strategies you're going to use, you need to determine the tactics, the detailed approach you'll take to delivering that strategy. Evaluate your options and document the best of them. So, at number 6, you need to write up your action plan for the risk. This will include what you intend to do, the timing or schedule for your actions, who will be responsible and the resources that they'll need, the people, the assets, the equipment and materials. What will be your budget? How much you're going to spend remediating the risk? And what are the review points along the way so that you can check that the actions you are taking are having the intended effect? And when you've done that, number 7 is to determine the residual risk. Does your management plan address the whole risk? If it doesn't, what is left? And how much of a threat is that? And if a residual risk remains, then step 8 is to document your contingency plans that you can put into action if any of that residual risk is materialized. So the process for creating a risk mitigation plan is straightforward. I've broken it down into 8 steps, and those are steps that you can follow very easily for each risk in your risk register. And if you need to know more about risk registers, then take a look at this video. Of all the tools and templates available to us as project managers, there's only one that I consider to be absolutely mandatory. If you're putting someone else's money at risk, if you're hazarding their reputation, you need to be clear that you can demonstrate that you've acted with diligence and appropriate caution in guarding their reputation and managing their money. And for that, the tool you need is a risk register or a risk log. So in this video, I want to talk about how to construct a robust risk register and the fields you can expect to have in it. Before I start talking about the fields that I put in a risk register, I have to say that this is a long list. It's a list of all of the core fields I would expect in a big risk register for a big project. That is to say, if your project is a small project, you may not need all of these fields, and it is far better to have a smaller, simpler risk register where you consistently fill in all the fields that are there than to have a big, complex risk register and you don't use it properly. So configure your risk register to meet your needs. You may not need all of these fields. The other thing to say before I dive straight in is that I'm going to divide this into 4 sections. Each section represents a stage in the risk management process. And I'm going to use a basic 4-stage life cycle of identifying your risks, analysing your risks, planning your risk management approach, and taking action. So part 1 of your risk register will refer to identifying the risks. And the very first field, and an absolutely mandatory field, I would say, is a unique ID or reference number for each risk. Because one of the purposes of a risk register is to act as a document of record, an audit trail. And therefore, each risk needs a unique ID. Allocate it when you identify the risk and add it to the risk register. And if for any reason you take a risk off or you change the risk substantially, then delete it, but retain the unique ID and never reuse that identifier. The risk IDs can be a sophisticated thing linked to perhaps a work breakdown structure or a risk breakdown structure, or it could be a simple numeric 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is my preferred approach. It keeps things nice and simple. And I tend to use leading zeros and give myself plenty of space just to make things nice and neat for when I'm sorting. The next thing you may want to consider is the originator of the risk, the person who first identified the risk. Why would you record that? Well, because if in recording the risk, you use some shorthand that you understand at the time, and then later you're not exactly sure what the nature of that risk is, you know who to go back and ask to get clarification. By the way, the originator of the risk is not necessarily the person who is responsible for managing it. It's simply the person who recognises that risk at the first time and causes it to be on the risk register. Another thing I'd say is, once a risk is identified, it needs to go on the risk register. If for any reason you say, no, let's not put that on the risk register, then what happens if that risk really does materialise? Someone will remember that you chose not to put it on the risk register and therefore not to actively manage that risk. And now you become culpable. Next, I'd have a short description or title for the risk. This is a shorthand description that can display easily. As a result, it won't be a full description of the risk, so you will need another field for that long form or full description. And let this be a full narrative field that can accept a large amount of text. The more carefully and precisely you define the risk, then the easier it is to find an appropriate response to that risk. The next part of your risk register is about analysing the risks. And the first field you might want in this is some form of risk categorisation. This may be linked to the work streams and work breakdown structure, or it may be linked to a set of standard categories you use in your organisation. For example, political risks, economic risks, social.
Kita lanjutin lagi ya. Because the Zoom limit 30 minutes. Nanti again.
Okay.
Okay, let's change 20.
Yes.
Risks, technological risks, regulatory risks, environmental risks, security, safety risks. A lot of people like to characterize risks, but the question I always ask is, having categorized your risk, what will you do with that information? Will it affect anything about how you handle the risk? And if the answer is no, then nice though it may be to be able to sort your risks into categories, it may not be worth the effort of defining those categories. Next, and crucially, is some form of evaluation of the risk. You may just have a single field here with a high, medium, or low, but it may be that you want something more sophisticated than that. And the main components of risk evaluation are, firstly, impact, and this may be a numerical assessment of impact, or again, a high, medium, or low type of assessment. The next thing is some form of likelihood, and unless you really know what you're doing with statistics and probability theory, I would keep this simple: high, medium, and low, or possibly very high, high, medium, low, and very low. And you may want to have some sort of proximity measure to recognise that a risk that could happen in the very near future, tomorrow or the day after, is one we're going to give more attention to than one that will happen in the way distant future, in a year or 2 years' time. And you may want a field with some form of consolidated risk score. Again, severe or not severe, high, medium or low, red, amber or green, or 1, 2 or 3. It doesn't matter what scoring mechanism you use, because again, unless you understand the mathematics of this really deeply, you want to be sticking to a mechanism that allows you to make decisions and not to drive quantitative evaluation. The third part of your risk register is about planning. And of course, you're going to have a field for your risk management plan. In fact, you may choose to have multiple fields for a plan with multiple components, different ways of mitigating the risk. If the risk is a higher likelihood risk and a higher impact risk, then one single mitigating action may not be enough. You may need a whole series of actions based on different strategies. Therefore, you may need several fields to hold this. Next, for each component of your plan, you need an owner, or ideally one owner across the whole plan to take responsibility for managing that risk so that it's less of a threat. Avoid the temptation as project manager to make yourself owner for too many risks, because you'll have no one to chase and you probably won't have time to manage them all. Workstream leaders, team leaders are ideal people to be owners for substantial risks, and experts and functional operatives are ideal for smaller, lower profile risks. The other fields to have under plan are planned dates, and in particular a field for the next planned review of the risk to evaluate the progress made on each of the mitigation plans, and to review your evaluation of the risk. And you may set a date for planned closeout, the point at which the risk is no longer a threat to the project. This is a target date for planning purposes and can be very useful. The fourth part of your risk register is all about action. And the first set of fields I'd have are about progress. So you would have a narrative field for status of that risk and progress on managing the plan. And against that status would be a date. Finally, I'd have a section of your risk register for risk closure. Again, there would be a status. Has the risk gone away? Is it no longer a threat? Has it been managed out? Has it ceased to be a threat for natural reasons? Has it materialized and been dealt with? What's the status of the risk? And the date at which it ceased to be a threat. So a good risk register will have a number of fields, but it won't have any fields that you don't need to properly manage the risk. But crucially, a risk register is a document of record. It's part of your audit trail. It is also one of the most valuable management tools you'll have as a project manager. So create a good, well-structured risk register at the start of your project, use it effectively, and you will find your project is under greater levels of control, greater levels of governance, and therefore is more likely to deliver on budget, on schedule, and to specification. Please do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. I'm going to be producing loads more great content, so please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of that content. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.
Hello, can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Okay, so we want to summary what we watch. So it's a part one is definition of the risks. It's uncertainty that can positive or negative after project outcomes. And the second one is a risk management, the process of managing uncertainty and controlling its impact. And we have the basic risk management process. The first one is identify the risk, and the two is analyze the risk likelihood, impact, and proximity. And the number three is plan. We have the plan how to manage it. Bentar. And the four is of course we have the take action and continuously evaluate adjust the plan. After that we have the risk analyze. We evaluate the likelihood 0 to 1, often simplified to low, medium, high, and impact severity of the risk. And for the risk management strategy, we have 6 in here. The first one is eliminate the risk, and then reduce likelihood, reduce impact, transfer the risk, continually planning, and the last one is accept the risk. And for the risk management tools, we have the risk management plan. It can be either a plan for managing a specific risk or the overall plan for managing risk on the project. And the risk register or log, it's a document that records all identified risk, their analyze, management plans, and progress. It's a management tool and document of report. And yeah, in the middle, we can see the presenting about the how to identify the project risk. And the first one is brainstorming. What is brainstorming? Yeah, it's a group idea generation, but it can be dominated by louder voice. It's like a discussion. And the second one is brain rating. It's like an individual rate ideas on card, reducing bias and allowing parallel processing cards can be exchanged to trigger an idea. So in this session, we can write on ideas in on card, so we release the bias and we can exchange to trigger the new idea from the each other group. And the next is a horizon scanning. What is horizon scanning? It is using an acronym SPECTRE to identify risk. It's a social, political, economic, commercial, technological, regulatory, environmental, security, and safety. And then risk database. We using past project data to identify common risks. So with the last project, if we have the project, we use the past project to identify the common risks we have. And then we break down the structure, the risk breakdown. The hierarchical, the composition of risks, we categorize it by stage. So we make the stage categories, and word chunks or framework like Spectre. And then work breakdown, we have the structure and we break down that. We analyze each work element for X one by one about our hierarchical. And then the pre-mortem, we imagine project failure and identifying potential cause. So we must know what's the project, the failure in where, and we must identify and we know what the potential in our project. Okay, maybe the part three. Can you continue? Andy?
Okay, all right. The part three is about what is pre-mortem. Pre-mortem is a technique to identify potential project failures before they happen by imagining the project has failed and working backward to find cause. The purpose is to uncover fundamental flaws in the plan that may be overlooked when focusing on smaller risks. The steps is first preparation. Gather the team and explain the exercise. Second, imagine a flashback. Envision the project and as a complete failure. Three, generate research. Identify potential cause of the failure. 4. Consolidate lists. Share and organize the failures and reasons. 5. Review risk register or plan. Update the risk register and plan based on feeding. The last is determine the next step. Allocate responsibilities for addressing identified issues. Okay, the part 4 is how to create a risk management plan. We can describe, characterize, and evaluate the risk, like impact, likelihood, and proximity. We must understand cause, identify root cause, and the sequence of events leading to the risk. Okay, the last is split into sub-risk. Break down large risks into smaller, manageable components, and then we can determine strategic response. Just the best strategies like eliminate, reduce likelihood or impact, transfer, and control plan achieve. Then we can determine tactics, define the specific action to for each strategy, and then break the action plan, like document actions, timing, responsibilities, resource, budget, and review points. And then determine residual risk, assess the remaining risk after implementing the plan. And last, we can document contingency plans, create plans to address any materialized residual risk. Okay, the next part will describe with Nazar.
All right. So the last part, which is the part 5, is about how to create a risk register. So the purpose of risk register is it's a document of a record and a management tool to track and manage risk. So for the risk register, there are four structures. The structure of risk register has four sections. The first is identification, which consists of unique ID or a reference number. Then the originator, which is the field for the source of the risk, the creator of the risk. Okay. And next is the short description for the risk. And lastly, for the identification section, is a long description. For the next section is the analysis section, which consists of two parts, which is we have the risk categorization and then we have the evaluation. So next is for the planning section, we have the risk management plan, and then we have the owner, and then the plan dates, which contain the next review date or the closeout date. And lastly, the action section, we have the field for progress, which consists of the status of the risk and the date. And lastly, the risk closure, which also have the status and date. The key consideration of this section is that uh, we can customize the risk register to our project needs. And we also prioritize consistent use over complexity. We use this as a management tool and a document of record to demonstrate due diligence. A well-structured risk register improves project control, governance, and success. Okay, that's all.
Okay, so now after we watch and we analyze, we go to next step. It's go to task. Handy, can you share how the task Dr. G give to us?
Okay, wait. I'll open a document.
Okay, so we start about the first one. Is number A. We must provide the information of the five types of technical ways of developing these apps. The description with example.
Do we have one yet?
Can you repeat?
I asked, do we have an answer for this question?
I think we can read lah. Read aja. Read question 1, A, B, C,
Alright.
D. Sampai C.
Kita baca je. Okay. Provide the information of the 5 types of technical risks for developing these apps. The description with example. Then untuk soalan B, describe the contingency plan that includes people, tools and costs. And C, using risk register, address the information of risk management for this project. So A, provide information of the 5 types of technical risks for developing this app. So we have to answer based on our our project. Let's
Yes,
the
our
chocolate.
project.
Let's see. Where's that group? So this must be on my project. Christmas. Yes. Kelihatan nama aja tu dia serve. Types of technical risk contingency plan. The research should be all be related to each other, right? So save. Yes. Okay. Okay, so I need to grab the last the project description that we have. Okay, let's see. Kalam. Okay, it's not.
I have done the question.
Okay, so yes, receive. Can you guys see the uh what is it? The answer for question A.
Yes, I can see.
So I guess with this we can start doing the database thing, the risk register. So for the risk register we need to use the template, right?
Kita create Excel juga kan?
No, yeah, probably buat dalam Excel lah. Okay. Let's introduce. Somebody cook.
Let's change the name. Gan, I just joined it. Welcome, Gan.
Huh. And
Hey, sorry, man.
yo, that's
I'm
crazy.
sorry I got late. So how's the progress, bro?
It's progressing all right.
Okay. So which one can I help out? Like, are you
Uh,
guys finished everything already?
almost finished.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know my bus got this late, bro.
Uh, no one know that can happen.
Yeah. Okay, so before I try to help out, let me get a gist of what's going on first.
Juga. Okay, so apa ni Hidianto? What are we?
Yes.
What do we
Yeah,
need to do
we
now?
have done. And the meet less than 1 minute again.
Let's go.
So
Wait.
we
What are we
are
supposed to do now?
we continue or not?
Huh?
Because less than 1 minute we can join again.
Oh, you mean the meeting is going to end soon?
Yeah, maybe just make new meet.
Oh,
Okay, okay.
And we create again, yeah.
alright.
Okay, okay,
Okay,
sure.
for
So we leave
finalization.
now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay, we continue for finalization.
Let's
Oh,
what's left to do?
just read it.
We're gonna read it.
No, no, just one example.
Okay.
What example?
Let's have a gun do this.
Okay.
Bro. Okay. What should I do, boys?
Maybe
But who
explanation
the heck
about
is Chew guy, bro?
the Excel. Just one example. Like.
For each?
Example in project X Rex Magister, you can say like Rex ID, description, Rex owner like that. Just for formality.
Okay. Which? Wait. Sorry, yeah. I'm a bit off of this
Yeah,
because I have no
just
idea
chill.
what you're doing. Uh, Hey, could you say again? Like what should I be doing right now?
Okay. So we can choose the example number one, ENT number 01,
Mm-hmm.
and we explain the description, like the description of the risk, what different models of the RHP system fail to exchange data seamlessly, and
Mm.
what's the responsibility in here, like the example in here, bintang, and what's request
Okay.
action we have to do, like request action, yeah, it's data and consistent, And this is you can see in regarding in our word like integration issue. It is integration risks occur with different system. So in the action, it's inconsistencies between modules like that.
Okay. So basically, which column should I be modifying right now?
Not modifying, just saying any Handik already read it.
Oh, I have to read, is it?
Yeah, just read, just read. It's already done.
Okay, okay. I thought I have to write something. Okay, okay, sorry, sorry.
No,
Okay,
no, no.
I read. Okay, I read my part right now. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so basically, I don't think I'm chill guy. I should be Gan. SCA 05. The description of the risk is the ERP system cannot handle the addition of new products lines or features. So, how do I know the risk is an issue or has reached a point that requires action because it is having difficulty adding new products and feature. So, the next thing I should be describing is could you zoom, bro? I cannot see, bro. It's very small. So I read the whole row or what?
Just example here. Just read.
Okay. So the groups that defines the types of risk is the data. No, it's the scalability. Sorry, it's not the data. Okay. And the group source rough estimate of how likely this is going to occur is 2. Estimate of how significant the impact this risk will be if it becomes an issue is 3. This is very severe, I think. Probability multiplied by impact 2 times 3 is 6. Yes, quick math. Uh, what will happen if the risk becomes an issue and no action is taken? So you'll have inaccurate customer info, order history, receipts, and operational errors. So decision made by groups on how to respond is we mitigate the system, I presume. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, proceed, bro. Uh, okay. Uh, so who is responsible for initiating this response is gun skill. Yeah, I assume it has something to do with me. Uh, okay. Uh, how do you know it is time to put the response into play? I we add new features require significant development effort or system downtime. So what is the response? We re-architect the specific modules for improved flexibility, and we design for modularity. Yes, and what do I expect? The result from the response is the ERP system. ERP can accommodate new features. Yes, I think this is one of my uh, part for the risk mitigation. Yeah, for the risk register. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh am I following what you guys what do you call that?
Yes, yes, you're right.
Am I on path with you guys right now, or am I like on my own world right now, bro?
No, no, no. It's correct.
Okay, so just one is enough, right?
Yeah, it's enough. Okay.
Okay.
So we have the 30 example in here. Handy, can you go to number 1 first? Yeah, so in here, like a description, there's owner, there's trigger, and all is regarding about in we do before in our word, and we implement the risk management in Excel. So we make this based on the YouTube video we watch, and there's a 30 example. You can scroll, go down, 10, 11, and 20, after, and 30. So we have the 30 example, how to risk management in here, and who responsibility and how to take action, and the scale about the risk, and even the how we integrate and how we get solution about the risk like that. Okay, maybe Hendik, can you at some point in here?
Okay, we have positive response options, like exploit, share, enchant, accept, and negative response options, like avoid, transfer, mitigate, accept, and alternate response option is contingent.
Okay, guys, I think our task is done. Maybe there's question from Gan or Nez.
Yes, I do have several questions.
Sure.
Uh, may I know, uh, may I know how you guys decided the content of the register, risk register Excel?
Oh, for the register.
Yeah, like the contents. How you guys come up with the contents?
It's from the Word. There's a example in Word. Cuma
Oh, there's example in Word. Wait.
Ya, itu the soal tuh, the soal soalnya. Yeah, it's regarding the question.
Oh,
We have the question
oh,
in,
okay, I see.
yeah, in the top. The the question.
Oh, so
It,
basically all the all the important points in the YouTube video you guys included in this report, is it?
yeah, it's just like a summary the YouTube video.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, and
And then
then
the
yes,
risk register just follow what the template sir gave, lah, is it?
yeah. So after we watch the video, we already know the risk management, and then Dr. G give the example, the question, and we solve that in the Excel like that.
Okay, okay, understood. Thank you very much for answering my question.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
So for me, I have no question.
Well, okay, now maybe this for today. We already done the task. The first one is watching the YouTube video, the wall video about the risk management, and many else. And then we implement in Word to give the solution about the question. And then the last one is we make the Excel for the risk register for this task. I think it's already done. So thank you guys for this tonight, for the discussion and for the watching the whole video, and see you in the class. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you guys, and sorry for being late. I'll
Yeah,
contribute more on the
just
next
chill, just chill,
assignment.
just chill.
Yeah.